Silk 106.9.
I used to watch the shows with my dad. Doing Britain's Got Talent has been amazing.
His youngest son, Alfie, says, "What's it all about?"
Performing my little song at the Palladium, just thinking this can't get any better. And then Ant and Dec came out. An incredible feeling. I mean, overwhelming doesn't cover it. And then to be at the semi-finals, I loved every second of it.
Mum, take a bow.
I'd like to think that watching me in the finals of Britain's Got Talent, it'll show my boys, Nathan and Alfie, is that you can achieve something beyond anything you thought was possible. That's got to be a good lesson to a kid, right? On stage for the finals, I want to make my family proud, my boys, my wife, my mum, and my dad.
And it won't be long before these masks are gone. We'll be living life again to the maximum. And we'll remember people like Sir Captain Tom. And in years, our kids will be reminiscing, not about the big stuff that they've been missing, but that every day they got to play with Dad and Mum. And we'll remember that we were strong when McDonald's was closed for so very long. And Britain's talent will be that we all carry on. And Britain's talent will be that we all carry on.
The winner of Britain's Got Talent 2020 is Jon Courtenay!
Congratulations! Quickly, how'd you feel?
Oh, don't make me speak.
How are you? You all right?
I'm all right, Tony. Yeah, very well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all. So, you had us in tears with those words from the song that you won the Britain's Got Talent with. I got to ask you, where did all that come from? I take it you must have stored that up for a long time, have you? You took that from lockdown and everything. It just came to you, didn't it?
Yeah, it was weird. I was given the idea of the original audition song by a friend of mine. He saw my show in 2019, and he'd had some experience with America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent, positive experiences. And he saw my show at a gig, and he said, "Why haven't you got on Britain's Got Talent yet? You know, it's a great platform, not necessarily going on it to win it, just to be seen by that amount of people, and you get some corporate bookings from it. You know, you get some other bookers involved." And so I said, "Well, I don't know what I do." And he very quickly said, "Well, just write a song about auditioning for Britain's Got Talent." And I've never really thought of myself as a songwriter really before Britain's Got. I mean, I've always written. I've always come up with little ideas and ditties and parodies and things for my live show, but I've never sort of taken myself seriously as a songwriter, if you like. If you asked me if I was a songwriter, I wouldn't say yes. And then I wrote that audition song quite quickly once he gave me the idea, because it was just writing from the heart. I had a lot of stuff to say, you know. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it for my kids, and I'm doing it because I'm fed up with driving up and down motorways every year, and in the hope that I have a break. And I'm nearly 50. All the stuff in the song was really it did literally come from my heart onto the page, and luckily there were a few jokes in there, and you pick on the judges, which people have done before and whatever. So yeah, that went so well, and then after that, it occurred to me, obviously getting the golden buzzer meant I knew I was going to be in the semis. So I had to write something for that. And that was weird, sitting down to write for the semi-finals. I mean, I actually wrote a few different things for it. There's a whole nother story there, which I'd sort of talk about in my tour. But the first song I wrote for my semi-final performance was long before lockdown. I mean, I actually wrote it on the train on the way home from the audition, because my wife stopped me from falling down some stairs outside the theatre just after it all happened. We might have had a couple of Prosecco's, to celebrate. And I sort of stumbled down these stairs outside and nearly fell into the road. And my wife caught me, and she said, babes, don't get yourself killed. That would be a waste of the golden buzzer, which was very funny because she's loving and thoughtful like that. So we giggled about it. And then on the train on the way home, I thought, what could I do now to scupper this opportunity that I've been given after so long in the business of finally getting this accolade. And I thought, there's lots of things that could go wrong. The worst thing is I could die. That would be terrible. That would ruin all my plans. So I wrote this song called "I Must Not Die," and it was about all the stuff that could go wrong between the auditions and the semi-finals. As I say, long before COVID and lockdown and stuff. And then of course lockdown happened, and I got a phone call from a slightly panicked producer who at some point realized that Ant and Dec's Golden Buzzer act, because you have to send them all your songs and stuff. So as soon as I wrote the song, it's a great song. I mean, I've performed it in a couple of virtual shows. As I say, it's going into my tour, and I'm really proud of the song. But somebody realised that Ant and Dec's Golden Buzzer couldn't go on national TV during a pandemic and sing a song called "I Must Not Die." Very, very poor taste. As I say, it would have been poor taste if the song had been written during the pandemic or about the pandemic, and of course it wasn't. Nobody knew what was coming, so that got put on the back shelf, and I had to come up with another idea. So I wrote the thing about my mum and dad, and then the finals one was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to write, because it had to be about what it was about. It had to be about what was going on in the world, but obviously people that have been and are suffering so tragically during this, mentally, physically, financially. So for a cheeky comedian to try and write a frivolous song on the piano about it was quite daunting. But once I found the hook of making it about not being overwhelmed by the big things that are going on around us, but rather to focus on the small things, I thought, well, that's not making light of what's happening. That's not making light of people's tragedies. It's hopefully giving people something to look forward to. So once I had the hook, I sort of wrote it quite quickly. That was a very long answer to a very short question. This could be a very long interview. Sorry, Dan.
That's absolutely fine. I've got a drink going on here. I know you have there as well.
Yeah, we're okay.
Get it down, you lad. I can edit that out. That's fine. Right. So basically, do you know what part of that song hooked the nation? I'm going to test you now, John. What part of that grand final song grabbed all the nation, made them cry, and then made them cheer?
Probably when I stood up and sung "It Won't Be Long Till These Masks Are Gone and We'll Remember People Like Sir Captain Tom." Yeah, that was, luckily Sir Captain Tom was still with us at the time. Otherwise it would have been a bit too poignant. I actually choreographed that because for some reason that in the semi-final song, there was a point in that song that I wanted to stand up and sing on the stage, and I did it in the rehearsal, and the producers said, "Could we ask you, would you mind not standing up, because it's difficult to frame the shot for all the cameras, and there's a lot more going on than just me performing, obviously, and they were projecting all these pictures onto the piano." This was in the semis, and I'd sort of rehearsed it all standing up, but I said, no, okay, we can look at that. So at the very last minute, I sort of changed it and had to sort of stay sat at the piano, which threw me slightly. But in the finals, when I wrote the song, I thought when it goes to this bit, there's a key change, and that in my head, that was the moment that if there was a live audience, they would have stood up and cheered. Flicking the mask away and all that kind of stuff. It was sort of quite a conscious thing to try and make people feel good. I mean, that regardless, it was nothing to do with winning a competition. It was absolutely about making people watch it and go, "Oh, we feel okay. This is optimism. This is, that's really where the song came from." Yeah, but I've watched it back a few times, obviously, and it's even I can watch myself quite objectively, as if it's not me, thankfully. So otherwise, I get too critical. So my kids keep watching it. So that moment when I stand up, I'm like, yeah, that's actually quite emotional.
It is really a daft question. I mean, do you watch that back? I mean, when I watch that back and my wife watches that back, we were watching it just downstairs because obviously I'm at home not long ago. We have a lump still in our throat. What does it do to you?
It doesn't affect me. I mean, I think if you're that close to something, I mean, obviously the hours of writing it and then the hours and hours and hours of rehearsing it, just trying to put it into muscle memory, and stuff like that. And then sitting at my kitchen table and I don't know if you've ever realized this. You probably haven't. Nobody ever wants to do it, but the masks that you get, those blue and white masks, they don't flick. you can't flick them. If you try and flick it, it just sort of flutters to the floor. And I wanted to fire it like a paper airplane. I wanted it to fly across the stage, and try and hit Ant and Dec on the other side of the stage. So there was about a day of buying a box of the masks and trying to find a way to make them so they flew, and it was doubling up and using wire and double-sided stick. It was like a Blue Peter scene on my kitchen table. So that was really annoying until we finally found the perfect way to make it flick through the air, So when you see it, I sort of nonchalantly pull it out of my back pocket and it looks like I casually flick it away. That was about 18 hours of work just to make a mask fly through the air. So it makes it less emotional when you've had to go through that.
What does it make you feel when people compare you to the likes of Les Dawson and Victoria Wood and all those kind of people? Because nobody's actually doing your kind of show anymore, are they?
Not so much. I mean, it's amazing. I'll when you have your name mentioned with any of those greats, I mean, we're all standing on their shoulders. I'm not sure about Les Dawson, famous for playing the piano badly, but
he had to be very good to do that.
No, he was. Yeah, he really was. I mean, he started life as a piano player before because he was on Opportunity Knocks. He got his first sort of bit of fame came through Opportunity Knocks, or was it New Faces? One of those two original talent shows. And he was a good pianist. He doesn't just play the wrong notes. Anybody can sit at a piano and play the wrong notes. He'd just play a semitone out. He'd actually, it would be just the wrong note. Yeah. So you ended up sort of, oh God, rather than. My son is great at playing all the wrong notes and in the wrong order. But no, Les was great. And of course, Victoria Wood, I mean, I don't think anybody who sits at a piano and does comedy, I mean, there's always, hopefully, I mean, to have, I don't know about a comparison, but I have my name mentioned in the same breath, people like Victoria Wood. And then, going back further, Victor Borger, Tom Lehrer, Dudley Moore, Flanders and Swan, all these people were fantastic comedians that sat behind a piano for some of their show. And modern day, you've got your Bill Bailey, Tim Minchin. There's a few people doing it, but I think obviously, I'm fairly different from Tim and Bill. We've all got our own thing going on, apart from the fact they are hugely more famous and rich than I am. But we've all got our own approach to what we do, which is great. I think there's room for all of us. But no, it's a huge honor when people say my name in the same breath as some of those greats that went before me. Yeah.
What would you? I mean, do you class yourself as what comes first? Are you a pianist, a musician, a songwriter, or are you a comedian, performer, entertainer? What comes first?
I don't know. I've been asked that before. It depends what I'm doing. I know it sounds funny, but. I mean, everything I do has always come from a place of comedy. I've always wanted to make people laugh. I think that's the greatest sound in the world. People, a theatre full of people laughing, or just a theatre full of people at the moment, I'd settle for, even if they're not laughing. But yeah, making people laugh has always made me feel really good. So when I started in this business, I did comedy magic. I didn't even use the piano in my show. I just did stand-up comedy magic and got people up on the stage and did card tricks and stupid routines with whatever I could get my hands on. But even then, I didn't want to be David Copperfield. I was more of a Paul Daniels than a David Copperfield. It was about the comedy. And so that really, when the piano came into the show, it was the same thing. It was about trying to make people laugh. And as I say, BGT really brought out this whole writing with my heart on my sleeve. I hadn't really done it that much prior to BGT. So yeah, who knew? Who knew I could do that?
What are your thoughts of it not happening this year? Surely they can do it like they did it last year and keep it all socially distanced. They can work around it, can't they?
Well, first of all, they could, but I'm quite happy they're not, because it makes me the longest ever reigning champion of Britain's Got Talent. So I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, I think the biggest issue, I mean, I wouldn't audition with no audience. Doing comedy, certainly, I don't know how stand-up comedians would do it. It's the hardest thing in the world, I think for the semis and the finals, it wasn't as bad because it was a competition. Then you weren't auditioning. You weren't just trying to prove what you do. People sort of knew you a little bit, and the virtual audience was fine. But I think for an audition, I watched some of the Americans Got Talent ones where they just had nobody in, just the 4 judges in a big empty studio, and it was so difficult. I felt so bad for the comedy acts. But I think the biggest issue was they wouldn't have been able to have any group acts. You couldn't have there'd be no orchestras, no choirs. because they just wouldn't have been able to have that many people in the studio or in the theatre at one time. It's so strict, you know. So yeah, I think they made the right decision. Amanda Holden was quoted as saying that the audience is the fifth judge, which I think is true. You know, the reception that the audience gives to the acts, good and bad, helps to make the show what it is. You know, the judges sometimes turn around and look at the audience and ask them, or get them going, or try and wind them up or something. You know. And that makes it quite entertaining to watch. It certainly wouldn't have been the same show if they'd have done it without an audience. So, no, I think I will be reigning champion for another year, and then we'll see what happens in 2022.
Jon Courtenay conquers all for another 12 months. Fantastic. We like the idea of that. I want to get on to what you're doing next anyway, but first of all, can I just ask about the judges? What they actually like in real life, and also Anton Deck? I mean, you know, I'd love to interview Anton Deck, but there's probably no chance. You know,
you know what? I'd love to give you the gossip and the scandal and make this a big revelation, but I've got, and not just because I want it either. I've got nothing bad to say. They, not just the judges or Anton Deck, but every single person that works on that show is absolutely amazing. I mean, a lot of people obviously have asked me or told me since then that they're thinking of going on, or any advice I could give them, and I've always said the same thing. If you're confident that you've got a talent, and that's the important thing. Don't, you know, we've all seen the train wreck acts, the people that have gone on there and should not have been there. And yes, it can be entertaining, but it can also be a little bit cruel. And to be fair, they've stopped doing that as much. I think the last couple of years you haven't seen as many train wreck acts, you know, that obviously shouldn't be there. So I think maybe since Eric was born, Simon's son, I think Simon softened slightly. That's a good one. Yeah. But the crew of that show is immense. There's got to be about 300 crew members backstage and doing what they do. The researchers and the assistant producers and the runners and everybody, and they just couldn't have been nicer. It was absolutely remarkable, and you know, I never heard anybody shouting or stressed or the most amazing experience. It really was. And the judges are just lovely. I mean, some I got to know better than others. Ant and Deck are just as nice as you think they are. I almost wish they weren't, you know, because everybody says, what are Ant and Deck really like? Or who's nicer, Ant or Deck? I said, they're the same person. You can't separate them. Yeah, they're just lovely. I mean, I didn't really see how they interacted too much with anybody else, obviously. But I absolutely can't fault them. Obviously, I only saw Simon at the audition. Then he had his bike accident. But yeah, everybody was lovely. Ashley was very sweet. David actually was for the Christmas show. I'd had my operation on my head the day before we filmed the Christmas show. And I probably shouldn't have done it, but it was such a big deal. I was closing the show and I was singing this song at the end of Ant and Deck, and it was such a big deal and still quite new to me to be a part of this world. So there's no way I wasn't going to do it. So I went down to film it the day after that I'd had the operation, and I was probably still groggy from like the general anesthetic and stuff. You know, I really wasn't in a good place. And it took a long time for me to record my bit. We did about 3 takes. I was forgetting words and getting stuff wrong, and I think nobody knew. We hadn't told anybody what they knew. I'd had an operation, but nobody really knew because I had to wear the big hat to cover the bandages and stuff. But nobody knew why, and it was weird. I think they just thought I was nervous, you know, doing this show at the Apollo. And after my second take, when I was obviously getting a bit stressed with myself and upset with myself because I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to, David just stood up behind the judges' counter panel there and just gave him this little rousing pep talk, just, you know, in front of the whole crew. Just, come on, Jon, you've got this. You're absolutely fabulous. We're right behind. It was quite emotional because I just wanted to say, you know, I'm okay. I'm not actually nervous. I would normally be enjoying this to the full capacity, but you know, I've just come out of hospital and I'm not quite firing on all cylinders. So I really felt like they were invested in me. Amanda was so sweet. She had a long conversation with my wife. And Emma actually told us some of the stuff that I'd been going through at the hospital on the sort of promise of discretion from Amanda, which she absolutely kept to her word. Yeah, and everybody's lovely. I'm sorry there's no gossip for you, Darren. I'm sorry I can't tell you that any of them are horrible.
I read Anton Deck's book, and in there I was scouring through the pages, going, "Come on, they've got to fall out at some point. You know, they can't work this long together without the odd little bicker now and again." But hey ho, but there we go.
I also don't think that you have their sort of longevity in this business without sort of being nice. It's that whole thing about being nice to people on the way up, because you're going to see them on the way down. And at the end of the filming of as an example, the end of the Christmas show filming, it was about 12 hours of filming that day, and most of it was with Ant and Dec. They didn't really get any time off for 12 hours. And it's hard work, just the mental aspect of presenting and auto cues and hitting your mark and retake after retake after retake. You watch all that going on, you realize just how hard work it is. It's quite exhausting. And at the end of obviously I was the last thing. So we did I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day. We finished doing that. They blew all the smoke and everybody was exhausted. The crew, the judges, everybody just was ready to go home, and everybody was clapping. And then Ant and Dec, when it sort of stopped, Ant and Dec said, can we just do a big shout out, please, to the crew? Because, the judges are there in their $1 million ball gowns and tuxedos, and Ant and Dec have got their multi-million-pound contract. But then you've got this 300 strong crew, which have been there for just as long, working just as hard, if not harder, coiling ropes and cables and moving cameras and all that sort of stuff. And not on quite as much money as some of the celebrities, let's say. And I imagine Ant and Dec do that all the time. I get the feeling that's, that's who they are. They're just like, yes, we are huge stars and we have been for 25 years, but we couldn't do it without you. And it was absolutely that attitude that I think has kept them at the top of their game.
Well, that's it. I love them even more now, John. Thanks for that. I want to talk about what's coming up for you next anyway, because you've posted some stuff on Facebook about you doing these gigs with the past BGT winners. Is it
with Julian? He came. I think he came third. Julian and I've been friends for a long time. Actually, we used to work on some cruises together. Wonderful musician, great saxophonist. He approached me and said, do you want to do a show together? And it's a virtual one, obviously, but yeah, it's we're also desperate to perform. I mean, this is our lifeblood. This is what we want to do. And as I say, Julian's a great performer, so I don't think we're actually physically doing anything together. I think he's doing like half the show, and I'm doing half the show. But yeah, that's this Saturday, isn't it? Yeah, I think this Saturday, so 27th. Yeah, exciting times.
And also, have you got when we get back to normal, have you got a tour booked in? Are you going to get out on the road? What's the plan?
Yeah, and that's really exciting. I mean, it's we've left it till quite late in the year in the hope that we'll have some sort of normalcy back. I think we have to, one way or another. I'm sure it'll still be socially distanced, and because this is the thing, Corona's not going anywhere. I mean, we're not going to eradicate Corona. All we're going to do is protect ourselves. It's the new flu. Flu's been with us for umpteen years, and every year vulnerable people get a flu jab, and I think that's going to be the same with Corona. So this whole thing about getting back to normal, I think there's going to be a new normal. I think that's the case. That's what we have to accept, and that has to include live entertainment, because not just for our sakes, but for the public's sake. There's no substitute for going to a theatre and watching your favorite band or comedian or whatever it is that you want to do. So it has to come back one way or another. So yeah, September and October, I think almost every night I'm in a theatre somewhere in the country, which is really exciting. And then I've got lots of Butlins dates as well, which is going to be exciting. I first got offered them, and I've never worked Butlins before. My first response was, oh no, is this what it's come to? Butlins and knobbly knees competitions and grab a granny and whatever. And it's not Heidi-High anymore. These are incredible venues with huge entertainment, purpose-built complexes that seat thousands of people. They book people like Diversity. They go there. Diversity will appear there on a Saturday night. So they've asked me to do a bunch of weekends at Butlins, which is going to be great, because that's going to be leading up to the tour. So I think I've got a lot of those in July and August. And then September and October, the main tour kicks off. All the dates are on joncourtenay.com. If anybody wants to come and see me, that would be great. And we're doing meet and greets and all that business. Do you know what, Darren? I'm so looking forward. I mean, not just being back on stage, but one of the bits of VT that Britain's Got Talent used after my win, obviously I was very hyper and, bouncing off cloud nine. But I did say, if you do come and see me on tour, I will stay after the show at the theatre for as long as it takes to meet as many people as want to meet me, just to say hello, to say thank you, whether you voted for me or not. It doesn't matter. Just to say thank you for coming to the show. If you did vote for me, say thank you for giving me this opportunity. Because I literally went from a jobbing act, driving up and down the country, but not for people who had bought a ticket to see me. That's the difference. I mean, what's going to happen later this year, hopefully, is that people are going to be willing to part with very hard-earned money or very hard-earned government grants to come and see me perform, which has never happened before. And I'm very humbled by it and quite overwhelmed. And it's going to be exciting. I'm writing what I think is going to be quite a special show. And I really will just stay as long as it takes to say hi to everybody, because it's all of them that gave me this opportunity. So. Yeah,
it's fantastic to know that you're going to be back out. We're going to be going out on tour. Just one more thing before I let you go, Jon. Are you sitting in front of your piano? You know what I'm going to ask you, don't you?
You want me to play? I've had a martini now, Darren. God.
Well, yeah, just don't swear in it, because I can't bleep anything out.
All right, so let me just reiterate to your listeners that we mentioned this earlier on in the chat, but this was the song that I originally wrote for the semi-finals, and I wrote it back in January of last year, just after my audition. And the idea was, what's the things that could go wrong to ruin this opportunity that I'd been given by Ant and Dec, giving me their golden buzzer, put me straight through to the semi-finals. How could I mess this up? And the song is called "I Must Not Die," because that would be the worst thing I could do to mess up this opportunity. But as I say, please remember, this was not written during lockdown. I don't want people to think that I'm that sick that I would write this sort of a song during lockdown. So this is okay. I can't believe you put me on the spot like this, Darren. Okay, so this is "I Must Not Die," if I can remember it, because I haven't actually performed it for about a month now. So on the edge of my success, I don't want to make a mess of this opportunity that I have got. In these crazy circumstances, I don't want to take chances with my Britain's Got Talent semi-final spot. I can't think of any reason why for this 14th season I couldn't be a possible hot shot. The only problem I could see could ruin any chance for me is if I'm dead, and I've thought of this a lot. I must not die. That would be quite traumatic if I die. It could be problematic, so I'll try to remain emphatically alive. I must not die. My career could bounce back from an assortment of setbacks. I could maybe stub my finger or my toe. I could get a broken nail, or there are many kind of ailments which would never make a difference to my show. I'm hoping that the pearly gates will want to make my visit late, although heaven has got talent, undoubtedly. But I want to live to be the big branch on my family tree, so my grandchildren can see my spot on BGT. I must not die. That would be the final curtain. If I die, then I think I'm fairly certain that I'd cry. Though my eyes would not be working, they'd be dry. I must not die. Since I was on TV, I've had advice from family with the greatest of intentions, I am sure. Don't experiment with chemicals, socialize with cannibals, or catch a disease without a cure. It's not on my agenda to put hands inside a blender or drink water that is anyway impure. So it must be safe to say that at the end of every day I stand a good chance that my life will still endure. And now the bridge I'm gonna croon. This is the bit of song that has a different tune, but bridges can be another fatality. Like a bridge over troubled water, London Bridge is falling down. The rope bridge grows in Indiana Jones, but Indy didn't die. Just like James Bond, you always can rely. The bullets will always miss him when they fly, leaving him to wittily reply, "No, Miss Moneypenny, I don't expect to die." Old school Jon Courtenay. I can't do Daniel Craig. My wife wants to. I'm not but dead like Shakespeare's Romeo. Mufasa killed by buffalo. Don't want to be a cameo, too early to say cheerio. Just want to play the piano and make it to another show. That's why I did not die.
Oh my days, Jon Courtenay, that is absolutely superb. Oh wow.
If anybody tuned in like halfway through that, can we just say again, I did not write that during lockdown. Okay.
Cool. Jon Courtenay, is there any new music on the horizon, album or DVD or anything like that?
Yeah, well, we're hopefully on the tour. We're going to make a DVD. We're going to film some of the tour, and hopefully after the tour there'll be a DVD available. That's going to be exciting. But yes, an album is definitely on the way. I've had a few people ask if certainly the BGT songs. But I have got a few songs in my repertoire, and not just stuff that I've written. I mean, I started working in piano bars for years, singing songs from the Great American Songbook from Gershwin and Noel Coward and George Shearing, and that's sort of the music that I grew up with, Sinatra and the Rat Pack and whatever. So that's still the music that I love to play. But I've always said that there's no point doing it the same as those guys did it, because you'll never do it as good as it. So if you're going to do it, just put your own spin on it, put your own little touch on it. So there's a few songs in the tour. Mr. Bojangles has always been one of my favorite songs, and I've got sort of a connection to that song, which I talk about in the show. So that's going to go on the album. Obviously, all the BGT stuff, bunch of other stuff that I've written. So yeah, the album will be out. I don't know when. We haven't recorded it yet, but we're sorting the studio at the moment, and we've got the sound engineer and everybody set up, ready to go. So hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll make a start on that. So. Yeah, check all my socials. I'm on all the usual stuff, the Instas and the Twits and the Facebooks and all that business. And I'll be announcing stuff on there. So that'll be great. Yeah.
Fabulous, fabulous. And where can people buy tickets for your tour? All being well, COVID secure at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's johncourtenay.com. There's two. You can go to johncourtenay.com, or if you can't, because Courtenay is spelled a bit weird. If you don't know how to spell my name, it's Courtenay. But if you forget that, you can also go to twistedpianist.com. Which you've got to be equally careful about how you type that in. Twisted Pianist, which is a piano player. I've had some people tell me that they've a couple of typos and they end up in some very strange places down the internet rabbit holes. So yeah, twistedpianist.com or johncourtenay.com. It's the same website. And there's a tour tab there. You can see wherever I'm going to be, and you can get tickets and all that jazz. Yeah.
Fabulous. Jon Courtenay, thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it, and all the very, very best with absolutely everything that's coming your way, and deservedly so as well.
Thanks, Dan. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Your station.